The Sony 90mm f2.8G lens is a prime macro lens. It's got optical steady shot, and it's the third lens that I ever bought for the a7 III. Today, I'm gonna be going over why I think if you have an E-mount camera, you should probably have one of these bad boys. So you guys ready? Let's get to it. So the Sony 90mm f2.8 is a prime lens, and what that means is that you can't zoom in or out with this lens. It's just one fixed focal length. Now the benefits of having a lens that won't zoom in or out is that because there's less moving pieces of glass inside this lens, prime lenses tend to be a little bit sharper than zoom lenses. And don't get me wrong, I like zoom lenses. I think that they're super versatile, they're really handy to have, and I've used them before. There's nothing wrong with them, but I just feel more creative with prime lenses, and that's okay. If you like prime lenses, use prime lenses. If you like zoom lenses, use zoom lenses. If you like both, use both. It doesn't really matter as long as you get what you want out of it. Another standout feature of this lens is that it's a macro lens, and what that means is you can get very close to your subject and still be able to focus on it. In order to understand minimum focus distance, you first need to know where you're measuring this number from. I used to believe that it would be measured from the flange, like where the lens actually meets the camera body, but this is incorrect. On every camera, there's a little mark and it's a circle with a line through it. And basically that's just telling you front to back, that's where the sensor is inside the camera body. And this is the point at which we measure the minimum focus distance from your sensor to whatever your subject is. What that means is, for instance, on this lens right here, the minimum focus distance is 0.8 feet. So 0.8 feet from that little mark on the camera body to whatever subject you're shooting is the closest you can get and still be able to pull focus. Before I ended up with the Sony 90mm, I actually tried out the Sigma 105 macro that they offer, and it was a really great lens. It was super sharp, really hefty feeling, took great pictures, great video. It had a built-in aperture ring, a declicking switch, all sorts of cool stuff. The big gripe I had with it was really hard to balance on my gimbal because it was an all metal macro lens, so it was huge and heavy. I ended up having to adjust pretty much every arm on the gimbal every time I wanted to use that lens. By comparison, this lens is way lighter and it's way easier for me to balance on the gimbal. I barely have to make any adjustments whatsoever and it's good to go. So going around the outside of the lens, you got a customizable button right here. You can pretty much set that to whatever you want. You got your switch on the bottom down here. This is your optical steady shot switch. It just turns on the stabilization or turns it off. And you got another switch somewhere up there if I can find it. Oh, okay, so this is your like full or halfway focus or all the way focus thing, and it basically it locks the focus out at real close or real far, so it's not hunting around when you have autofocus set on. I never use this switch, it's always just set on full. And the only other feature on the outside of this lens is the focus ring. And this is actually really interesting. You don't have an autofocus or manual focus switch. You just move the ring forward or backwards, whether you want to focus with the ring or not, and that's it. I thought that was a really cool and streamlined design by Sony. So another thing you might notice is that I don't have a lens hood on this lens. That's because I never use lens hoods for any of my lenses. I think that they're stupid and useless. I think that if you really need the shade that bad from the sun or you're getting a real bad flare, just put your hand over it and it does the exact same thing, but then you can still use filters. So the Sony 90mm is the third lens that I bought for the a7 III, and I didn't think that I would be using a macro lens nearly as much as I actually use this lens. I use it constantly for photography, video, portraits, hard close-ups. I really like that when I'm doing a review, I can use this lens to grab textures out of things. If I have a product that I really want to pull a texture out of like a piece of it, it's really easy to do with this lens because it is a macro lens. I would say that one of its weak points is probably low light. At f2.8, you're not going to be shooting in the dark with this thing, but it's not really a slouch either. Another thing that I like is the filter ring size on this lens actually matches another one of the lenses that I have for the a7 III, so I only have to buy one filter for both of these lenses. If they were different sizes, I would be stuck messing with a step-up ring or buying two separate filters, and I don't need to do that because they match. In terms of price, you're probably going to be spending anywhere from $1,000 to $1,200 on this lens if you buy it new. If you buy it used like I did, I got mine for about $850, I'm really glad that I did because it was basically new when I got it. The previous owner probably took really good care of it or just didn't have it for very long, which is awesome because I just basically ended up getting a $1,200 lens for like 850 bucks. By comparison, the Sigma 105 2.8 macro lens is gonna run you like 800 bucks, I think, brand new. Used, you could probably get it for way less. If I had to do it all over again, if I had to choose between the two of them, but I wasn't having that gimbal issue, I would probably still go with this lens just because I personally like this lens a little bit more. Now, granted, that Sigma lens is amazing. It's super modern looking, way more modern looking than this lens is. It has the aperture ring, it has the declicking switch, it has an all metal design, as I said, and it's just a really nice lens, but they're both really nice lenses, and I just personally like this Sony G lens more than I like that Sigma lens, which basically answers your question right there. I would buy this one again. Even if I didn't have that gimbal issue, I would probably still buy this one again. I did notice a slight sharpness boost in this one, which is another reason I wanted to go with this one. And I just like the focal length of 90 millimeters better than 105. It's just a little more versatile for my needs, and that's all I got to say about that. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Sam Has a Spending Problem, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!